Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, it's really important to remember that even the stuff that gets thrown away still has value, and we still have attachment to it, either emotional or otherwise. And it's kind of amazing to see just what happens to the stuff we leave behind, because it still has a life long after it goes out of our hands. And if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you're in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast, where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals, and we pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more, in a light and in a conversational fashion. And if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to go on a limb and assume that you do, because you're listening. You can subscribe to the podcast. We're basically everywhere. You can find us over at Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, basically wherever you get your podcasts. Give us that old like and subscribe with a 5-star rating. And plus, please don't forget that we also archive all of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we would really appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to follow us on social media. You can find us over at Facebook, over at Twitter, and over at Instagram, at In the Seats, obviously, for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I'm a broken record because I say this all the time, but please pay us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca, for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, film festivals, basically the moving image at large, because we love to write about it and watch it and talk about it. We love it when you come by and read about it and listen about it, so please pay us a visit. Well, it's a bit of a theme. We got more hot docs going on because it is the Hot Docs Canadian International Documentary Film Festival, which is running until May 8th here in Toronto, but is also available online somewhat for fans all across the country who want to get their nonfiction on. It's a fantastic festival, which we have supported for years and we absolutely love. And there's some really interesting films. And I mean, the one we're talking about today is having its world premiere this coming Sunday, May 1st, and it's called Scrap, from director Stacey Tenenbaum, who's a friend of the show. We've talked to her before. But it's really this fascinating look at these sort of technological graveyards, like car graveyards, even like a phone box graveyard. These amazing spaces where we see discarded machinery left to rust, and we meet these people who collect, restore, and recycle our scrap, our junk. And we see sort of beauty and the purpose in the stuff that's been left behind, and understand how when we let something go, it still has a life. It still sort of exists. It just doesn't disappear from the earth like our cell phone. You know, when we get rid of our cell phone and get a new one, it just doesn't magically disappear. It actually goes somewhere, and people have contact with it. And it's kind of amazing to see how the disposable society we've created, especially in terms of commerce and product, is kind of starting to come back and bite us a little bit. And Stacey brings up this issue and so many more in the film and in our conversation, which is a good one, because she's spearheading a lot of interesting initiatives and just sort of trying to bring awareness on, you know, where our stuff goes when we let it go, because it's got to go somewhere. But if this sounds like an interesting one for you, and believe you me, it is an interesting one, and it's a gorgeous film, check out the world premiere of Scrap, which is this coming Sunday, May 1st, at the Hot Docs International the Hot Docs Canadian International Documentary Film Festival. I always screw that up. But also, there's going to be a second screening on Wednesday, May 4th, and it might be streaming online. I'm not entirely sure, but it's also going to be getting a theatrical run later in the summer, perhaps the fall. So there will be plenty of chances for audiences to see this fantastic film. But first off, please enjoy our talk with Stacey, because between you and me, it's a good one.
Now, I mean, obviously, just to kick it off, man, congratulations on the film. It was beautiful. I loved it. But I mean, you made a gorgeous film about garbage, basically. Can you walk me through sort of the origin of the idea on your end?
Yeah, I mean, I find garbage scrap to be really beautiful. So I guess that's actually where it started for me. I'd seen a picture of one of these graveyards for space junk in
Right.
Moscow. And I was like, wow, this place is amazing. And it just the history and the sort of weird feeling you get when you look at places like that. I just was like immediately entranced. So then I started finding out that there have these graveyards all around the world. And so at first I was really into the aesthetics of it, just how they look and sort of the question of like, where does stuff go? Like it seemed to me it was a question that people weren't necessarily asking. You know, like we all know about recycling in our homes and, you know, kind of recycling cans, but when you come to these big objects like ships and planes and, you know, trains and even phone boxes, like they all disappeared and people, where did they go? Like nobody stops to ask. So I thought that was an interesting question, and so that's kind of how the film came about.
Well, because I mean, obviously for something like this, because I mean, there are environmental undertones to the film and sort of issues that come up, but you can't necessarily choose subjects willy-nilly. Like you've got to choose sort of very specific subjects to sort of create this very sort of visually engaging story that you went through. Can you walk me through sort of your research on finding not just subjects, but the right subjects?
Yeah, well, at first I was really looking for the graveyards, and I thought, okay, the graveyards are going to be characters, and they're going to be, you know, the characters in the film will be these different graveyards. So that's kind of how I started. But I'm really into people. I mean, my films are usually about people, and I also very quickly it sort of shifted towards, well, I want to find these people that are doing stuff with old pieces of metal, maybe reusing them, or have some kind of deep attachment to them, like collectors or restorers or recyclers. So I started looking kind of more in that line. And then I think that really deepened the whole idea of the film, because I mean, at its core, it's really about our attachment to things and how we can be attached to things. So that was my guiding principle when I was looking for characters in the film, was their relationship to these discarded things, and sort of did they each have something else to add to the story or a little different take on it. So that's kind of how I built up each of the stories.
Well, and I mean, each of the stories, and I mean, this, like, I've got to ask you about this because I love how you intro us to each story with sort of the overhead, and it gives it very much sort of this sort of epic and sort of big, expansive, artistic feel. And I mean, when you were setting out to do this, like, how conscious of you, like, because obviously you want to talk to the subjects and get their stories, but at the same time, you want to create something that looks fantastic and sort of really evokes people emotionally just from the pure visuals. How do you sort of balance the two when you're putting something like this together?
Yeah, I always knew from the beginning that I wanted to have drone shots because it just gives you a sense of the scope of the place, you know? I mean, when you see one or two close-ups, you don't know, is there one thing there or is there, you know, so when you pull back, you do get a sense of how big these places are in some cases. And my original idea was actually, which it didn't end up sort of translating, but I thought I would start big and then sort of find the character with the drone. I tried to do it. It didn't always work. And then sort of go like from big to small. That was my original idea going into the film, just because I knew I wanted to take like a macro view as well as like really get these personal micro stories. But I think the drones are really essential to the film and do add a lot of beauty and sort of grandeur and show the scope of these graveyards and also the scope of the problem.
Well, and I mean, and it shows just how we're, like, at least on a global level, in many ways, we're connected to stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, there's a graveyard for phone boxes. I mean, I didn't even know that was a thing.
Neither did I until I started working on this project. Yeah, I mean, it's extraordinary. But if you think about it, those British phone boxes are so iconic.
Yeah.
And they were all going to be scrapped. They were going to be thrown away. And it was just one man had the idea, oh, I can't let this go. And now you see them back on street corners and they're kind of like the symbol of the UK or these British phone boxes that they were actually going to lose. And I think that's a big part of the film is like, you know, with this disposable culture, we're losing like our history, like just, you know, throwing it out. The history of design, right? I mean,
for sure.
So there's so much more that we're losing in terms of like culture and history and stuff like that I think people don't really realize is happening.
Were those the big surprises for you? Maybe just sort of as you went through this whole process, because I mean, obviously, like we've talked about the phone boxes, but I mean the car graveyard, to even just the junk as people are sifting through the conveyor belt. I mean, there really is this. I mean, I'm looking for the right word here, but I mean, there's a real sense of humanity there, because I mean, to me, it's that longing for connection, and I mean, in many ways, we connect ourselves and our lives through things.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that all my films are really about that. At the end of the day, is that longing for connection, a longing for a time when things, like I think things are very quick and disposable. I think that's even a line from the film, is that things are so quick and disposable. And I think that has an impact on us as humans, that we, you know, in terms of the connections that we have with things and also each other, you know, that shared history. If it's just getting thrown out all the time, like then, I mean, your cell phone, if you compare your cell phone to a British phone box, right? Yeah. Like you're just like, they're not going to exist. They're going to be gone in years. And that's part of, you know, our history and the history of design, like I say, and just things that connect. I think things can connect us. And that's part of the film is really, if we look at things in a different way and ask more of the things, like buy things that last longer, that they can be imbued with a lot of sentiment and meaning and stuff like that.
Well, and also, I mean, I think it really sort of highlights the need for, I mean, just even a general understanding of the difference between recycling and sort of upcycling.
Yeah, that's one thing that I did really feel strongly about after I finished the film, because, you know, everyone thinks, oh, recycling, it's good and I'm doing my part. But I actually now think that recycling might even be contributing to the problem, because people are like, oh, well, it's going to be recycled, so I can just throw it away. And they don't think, well, my phone, you know, I'm going to throw my phone away and then it's going to end up in India in this place where people have to dismantle it. So really, I've moved much more towards ideas of buying stuff that can last, repair is a huge thing, and repurposing, so upcycling, taking something that had one purpose and using it in another way. So there are quite a few upcyclers in the film. I call them like next level upcyclers, because, you know, there's one guy who's an architect who's building like a huge church out of an old ship. So it's like that ship has done its life as a ship, but it can sort of live on in this building. And then there's the sculptor who's taking the old farm equipment and making these like stunning sculptures. So I think that that's really more of a solution, is extending the life of things rather than just thinking it's going to get recycled and then you don't have any obligation at that point. It's just, it almost allows people to waste more because they think, oh, well, it'll be recycled. So I'm definitely moving away from the idea of recycling.
What is it about, I mean, scrap in general, that I think that maybe you find so compelling? Because I mean, in watching the film, I mean, when I saw the 747, I was just like, I mean, I knew it was scrap, but I was oddly compelled to it. It was this weird thing that I kind of wanted to explore it and see it and sort of understand why it was sitting there. Like, what is it about what we throw away that we're compelled to?
I think that's something that I really wanted to explore in the film, because I knew like there are these people that just, there's something about these things that draws you to them. And I wanted to try and figure out what that was, you know. I mean, definitely the airplane. I mean, it's just so fun to go in and to explore an airplane from, you know, that you wouldn't necessarily, parts of it you wouldn't necessarily get to see. And it's a real landscape. But and also the old car city with all of these old cars, you know, just sitting in the forest, getting subsumed by nature. I mean, it's just amazing to be in those places. And I think what draws people to them is that sort of memory. It's like that trip down memory lane kind of feeling, you know, like you might see a car and be like, oh yeah, I had my first date in this car, or like my granddad drove this car. So there's like these connections that we have with things that we might not even know we have, you know, or, you know, that 747 reminds me of your first flight where you used to be able to smoke on planes, you know. So it's just, I think it gets our imagination going. And yeah, there's a lot of things that draw us to these places. And that's why I wanted to explore them and to explore why they're important to us and why they should be important to us.
How important was it for you to consciously make this something that was very artistic? Because I mean, had you gone sort of the more nuts and bolts, sort of talking to subjects, dealing with issues around these issues, it would have felt like a very different film. How important was it for you to sort of put like creativity and sort of something, a very beautiful visual signature to the film?
It was something that I really had in mind right from the first conception of the film. So I originally called it an environmental art film. So I feel it's more of an art film than possibly like, I mean, it was very important to me that it was beautiful. And I think that the reason for that was, well, first of all, I find beauty in old rusted metal. I mean, maybe I'm weird. I kind of call it nature's art. Like the rust creates this beautiful art, right? And it's all by nature. But I think also I felt as a filmmaker that if I could make people find these things beautiful, then they might care about them more. Like, and so I guess the whole film is a bit like we should care about the things and we should want to hold on to them, and that we're losing by not holding on to them. So part of that was making these places look really beautiful, and showing the beauty in them and showing our attachment to those things. So that was really, really important to me, like right from day one.
And I mean, you know, something else I think this film does is just it helps to tear away sort of the preconceived notions of documentary film, because I mean people who are maybe on the outside looking in, who don't understand sort of the freedom that is allowed inside the genre itself, can think of documentaries as talking heads, facts, blah 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 blah. But it's so much more. And I'm kind of curious from your perspective, what is it about the documentary space that allows for this kind of freedom?
I don't know if it doesn't necessarily does, to be honest. I mean, I think that there's still a real attachment in documentary film to like the 3-act structure,
right,
to character films that follow someone through a journey, ABC, and at some point. I think that's still very much the way that people like to see their films. You know, this, I guess people call an essay film, and not everyone loves them. I mean, not all people are open to it, you know, but I think that the form is really interesting because it allows, I mean, for me, most of my films have been essay films, and it just allows me to explore something in a different way and to tell a lot of different stories. And since I travel, it gives you different perspectives from people in different places. So I think that adds to the conversation. So yeah, it's a very different kind of movie. I always told my editor even, like, it has to just be like flow over you. Like I wanted people to go to the movie and sort of be sucked into this space and just let everything flow over them and to just be in those places. And so I kind of hope that it's a bit of an experiential film in a way, that you feel like you're just kind of brought along on this ride to these weird places, meeting these cool people. And the music too, like I really made that effort just to have everything be rolling and to draw people in.
But you know what? That's the kind of film I love, because I mean, I don't necessarily want to be hit over the head with a club with something. I want to be sort of immersed into it and sort of be made to sort of experience it and understand it. And I've got to ask, what were the films that made you want to tell films like this? Or were there any?
Well, I specifically for this one, I really liked manufactured landscapes. That was definitely an inspiration, and Anthropocene that just came out, that had just like these beautiful visuals with very little kind of, you know,
right,
talking about them, very little talking heads, just letting the images speak for themselves. So that was definitely an inspiration for this film. Yeah, I mean, I like films about people, films that travel. I mean, those are kinds of the films that I like to see. So, but definitely for this one, Manufactured Landscapes was a huge inspiration.
No, I mean, at the end of the day, you're about to have the unveiling to the world. What is your hope that people pull away from this? I mean, with people getting to see this, in full audiences once, what is your hope for the pull away from this film? Because for me, in watching it, it's a reminder to understand what was, but not to sort of trash it to the point where we ruin what's going to be at the same time, if that makes any kind of sense.
Mm-hmm. I think different people are going to get different things out of this film, just because it touches on all of these things very lightly, right. And I think it leaves an open menu for people to sort of see what they take from it. I mean, I do the stuff we've been talking about today, just the idea of the importance of things in our lives, like just even reevaluating like how much we're buying, what we're buying, and what is the lifespan of that thing. I do have an impact campaign that I'm working on in conjunction with the film, and have a lot of partners that are like actually really active in the environmental space, stuff like right to repair and circular economy and all these things. So, if people wanted to change their lifestyles, they could certainly go to my website and, meet some of my partners and get more involved, or just figure out little ways that they can change their consumption habits. So that's a big thing for me. I am also a partner with the Canadian National Institute for the Blind, and I'm doing phone collections at all of my screenings.
Fantastic.
Which is so cool. And instead of your phone ending up in India, your phone will actually be fixed, and it's being repurposed and given to, they load it with all these apps that help people with sight impairment to navigate the world.
Oh,
so
fantastic.
It's like a great upcycling initiative, and that's like a really simple thing that people can do if they don't want their phones to just be trashed. They can actually upcycle and repurpose and give back, and you get a tax receipt for your phone, which is just the coolest thing. So that's something that's just like a very concrete thing that people can do when they come see the film.
Well, that's a beautiful thing, and thank you for making a beautiful movie, and thank you for the time today.
Thank you so much. It was great to chat with you.
All right. Thanks, Stacey.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.